You have to really, live your life not to be too impacted by cases and problems, by focusing on solutions. There are people in worse circumstances. So you start looking at life with a positive kind of view. You look for the silver lining.
This is Lee, Motivationalee, where our passion meets our purpose.
What pivotal moment in your life led you to a career in law and strategic career?
I think, Lee, very good question. I think in life you have pivotal moments,
Yes.
Like today is a pivotal moment. This could be a pivotal moment right now.
Yes.
I think it is.
360 pivotal moment, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it shouldn't be 360, maybe 180.
Just 180, okay.
Yeah,
let's
360 you'd be back at the starting point, but maybe with a different perspective.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
When I was 5 years old, my father had guests over at our house, and these people were from, some of them were from Indonesia, some of them were from Malaysia, and I'll never forget this story. And then one of them asked me, he said, "You know what, can you tell me an animal with 3 legs?" I said, all right, this kid, he's not going to be able to answer it, And I said to him, that's very easy. It's a horse, of course. He said, a horse? I said, yeah, well, if you chop one of its legs off, it's a 3-legged horse. It's a 3-legged animal now. I said, this guy, he's always, crafty with the answer. So I think, when you think of lawyers, you think of non-lateral thinking. So thinking that is just beyond the obvious, to come up with creative and innovative solutions. I enjoy thinking out of the box and enjoy thinking, in different terms than other people, which then, that continued throughout my life. My father had a lot of contacts in South Africa. South Africa is a very interesting country, both in terms of culture, in terms of its history, in terms of its politics, in terms of the legal aspect of the country, in terms of justice. So when I arrived there at 14 years of age, and it happened to be that, my parents were thinking of sending me overseas to a boarding school. It happened to be South Africa. And I arrived there, and my grandfather was like, look, there's a great opportunity for you to go to Africa and experience, different culture, different environment, different atmosphere. It's very good for you as a young person to be experiencing that. And I landed there, and then they said, look, South Africa, they speak 7 languages, 7 official languages. I learned more about the country as I was there, and I've been many parts of the world, and I say Africa is genuinely one of the most happiest people on earth, that people were very positive. I got to experience, Lee, people coming from different parts of Africa and understanding about them, and I found Africa to be a very spiritual and a very happy place. Really, I really enjoyed my time. You get to experience people up close. Back to year 11. To finish off VCE here, and not many people know about South Africa the way I did, and I don't blame them, because you have to experience it. The teachers encourage you to do some kind of career testing, and I did my one, computer-based testing, and I ended up receiving, 6 pages of potential careers.
Wow.
I think a lot of it was based in social context. I had done legal studies as well, which actually I'd done most of my subjects was science, but our teacher said, well, you can't do just science-based subjects, you have to do a humanities-based. What were the options? Legal studies was one, so I ended up doing it, and I really enjoyed it. I still didn't give it much thought as to what I might want to do in the future, as to, what you will do. And I remember I had picked technology-based and science-based, like biotechnology and
or infotech.
Biotechnology was one, robotics was another. And then, Lee, you have this thing called change of preference week. As I'd received those offers, I had a change of heart. it has to be something more based in a bit more social, a bit more in the humanities field, you know. So what had happened was our school had taken us on tours of various universities, and one of the universities that I had visited with my school was RMIT University, which is the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. And I thought, you know what, this is the only, and you know, it's right in the centre of the city. You could go to Melbourne Central, you could go to QV, you could go to wherever you liked. And I said, look, I think this university campus gives me freedom. So I ended up enrolling myself ultimately, you know, to the Social Science, Legal and Dispute Studies course, which at RMIT, they have a law program, but it is a postgraduate Juris Doctor program, so you have to have an undergraduate degree.
So a prerequisite.
Prerequisite, yeah. You cannot enroll in the Juris Doctor program without an undergraduate degree. So I thought, you know what, social science, because social science kind of, and I started, you know, going through the course material and the course guide and, you know, humanities, social justice, and I'm like, you know what, that fits in with what I had seen in South Africa. It was the pursuit of social justice. It sounds easy, but it is a very complicated thing. When you see it on the ground, it's not, you can't read it in the textbooks, but at least learning about it, social justice and social science, which were majored in legal and dispute studies. So basically it covered a lot of legal subjects, but maybe from a more sociological point of view, basically why. So you got black letter law, which is your legislation, you know, your statute, basically, which is legislation, and then you got common law. That's how the legal system works here.
But what do you, right now that you are practicing as a lawyer for many years, what do you specialize with? I'm sure lawyers have specialized areas, right?
They can. They do focus. So once I finished my undergraduate, then I did the Juris Doctor program. I really enjoyed, you know, many areas of law, including, you know, contract law and commercial law and international, transnational law. So I really enjoyed, you know, those kind of things. But I think, you know, I have a very important story in that, you know, when I started, it's all about the vibe and how you feel with me. You know, it's not my decision making does involve, you know, a lot of factors that you can't readily identify as linear thinking. And then I thought, you know what, I actually don't see myself, you know, being in a major corporate law firm. And I just want, you know, a smaller practice that's more what I call frontier law, you know, actually helping people in the suburbs and actually, you know, getting very close to the clients and helping them. And that's how I started.
Connection,
and that's how I started my career. So I've done many areas of law in general practice, but currently I'm more in commercial practice, so more commercial law, partnership disputes, contract law, you know, property.
Family law.
I do some family law as well, you know, just because of, you know, I have experience and, you know, we've done that before, but put it this way, it's more like a special request. Like I might know the director and the director, you know, has family members. Yeah. And, you know, whilst we do their commercial cases, we will do their family law cases as well for their relatives, because the kind of companies I deal with are actually family-owned companies, you know, a lot of them. You know, they're startups from entrepreneurs. They're people that, you know, came to this country with, you know, not much and through luck. Well, I call it luck. You know, a lot of those people won't admit it, but there are some, I think, genuine people will admit that they've been lucky or fortunate or blessed, however you want to call it. Yeah. You know, and then they started and things just worked out for them. And their company grew, and you know, now, you know, they're involved in, and a lot of them support community as well, like just community in general, different communities. And you know, so I look after those type of companies. Yeah, so more in commercial law, but I have experience in family law, in criminal law, and you know.
So they're like intertwined with one another, or there's a link between those?
Generally,
it does work.
I don't think so. Yeah. You know, you wouldn't want commercial law and criminal law to be interlinked, I think.
True. But family?
Family, yes, of course. Family dynamics and, you know, the dynamics of a family, of course, involved in any aspect of law. You know, really, if you are dealing with any type of law, even if you deal with employment law, you have to consider, you know, an employment incident will affect the person's family, their parents. If they've got a partner, their partner. If they don't have a partner, maybe their friends. You know, it can impact. The impact on one person is an impact that goes beyond. So we are all intertwined in that way, definitely, as a society.
I see.
But yeah, family law is a very interesting area of law, and that's, I did a lot of those when I first started practice of law.
Interesting. Like with the family law, what do you think would be the, not strategy, maybe like ways on how they can find the right lawyer?
The idea of finding the right lawyer just depends on what you have in mind. That's what it is. And in family law, sometimes people see law as black and white, which it can be, or winning and losing. In family law, it's almost any mediator will tell you there are only losers, really. I mean, to put it out there, that you can win in family law is a bit of a myth. It's not, you cannot win. You can come to a place where you come with a more acceptance. And I always say, Lee, that a marriage breakup, we're talking, it takes, in my view and my experience, 10 years for a person to recover emotionally, financially, psychologically, spiritually. It can take 10 years. It can take less if you do a lot of work, and perhaps if you're in a good place, but it does. And why 10 years? Even if if you've got children, then of course that is going to be a lingering impact of that's going to continue for maybe beyond 10 years. Because the thing is, when I deal with family law and there are children involved, I always say one thing. I say, look, the Family Law Act and the family law, how it operates in Australia, deals with children up to the age of 18 years, after which they become adults. But reality is, even after 18, they still are your children, so you would be involved in their life for many years after. It doesn't stop just at 18. The family law impact stops. So building that relationship and all of that within the constraints of the family law system can be challenging at times. If there's a lot of disputes that involve the children,
two sides,
involve both sides, involve intervention orders, involve, all sorts of allegations.
Yes.
It can be very, very complicated.
True. With that kind of complication when it comes to the co-parenting.
Yeah. Co-parenting is an ideal.
Isn't?
Is an ideal.
Is an ideal one, yeah.
But it is not that easily achieved.
Why? Why do you say so?
Because why it's not easily achieved is a lot of the time it requires cooperation.
Which is, I think it's easy, isn't it?
It's
you
not
just
easy.
have to talk about it.
The practicality of dealing with people that are separated and dealing with issues is not easy. See, in a marriage, those things are more easier to handle, even though the disagreements on things, but it can be easier when a separation occurs. It is very difficult in practice to put, two people, for the sake of their children, to agree in relation to things without forgetting the other dynamics that are outside of the children. So that's why there's a lot of programs to assist parents in co-parenting and support and, reinforce and the impact it has on children. So that's the other, it's a very complicated, emotional and tiring area, but you have to always look for the silver lining. I think you can't, as a lawyer that's been in South Africa, that's been in very tough and difficult circumstances, to say even in family law, you always still have to look for that silver lining.
So is that an easy way to, like, for example, this couple is going for a possible divorce, right?
Yeah.
So they can go for a mediation first.
They can agree. Divorce. They can agree amongst themselves first, if that is possible. So many factors
but there's no money involved, right? Like you don't need to pay a lawyer.
No, I mean, if you agree amongst yourself, that's a form of agreement.
Okay.
The problem that it's not formalized can create other issues if later on there's disputes about what the arrangements were. But there's something called a parenting plan as well, which there are government mediators that can write a plan as to how the children are going to spend time.
I see.
And then there's the division of assets. You kind of have to treat these two issues separately if I can explain it that way, because mixing the two issues can create its own problems, because the money and the children and the children and the money, and then you can create problems. It's not unusual circumstance that parents do go through a marriage breakdown.
True. Well, no one is perfect in this world, right?
Correct.
Even if they're already in a relationship for like 100 years, perhaps.
Correct. Or as
it happens. There are misunderstandings and disagreements.
So I've done divorce hearings where the client knows they've been married for 26 years.
Oh wow!
11 months, 22 days, 5 hours, 10 minutes, and 30 seconds, precisely as the judge puts the signature on the divorce document. So it gets quite complicated.
It is actually. It's just listening to it, it feels like it's so heavy. And being a lawyer, what more if you have all of these, circumstances in front of your, on your desk.
So we
looking after every client. Do you sleep?
I sleep quite comfortably.
Good.
Thank you.
Because if you have lots of cases, when do you find the time for your family?
Look, you have to balance. You have
your mission and vision to fulfill for your clients.
So I think,
how do you balance that?
Lee, I think it's all about energy and being in the present moment. I think to do justice to anything, you need to be like today. We're at a podcast, so I can't really be thinking about this is the moment, right? We're in this time zone. So when you are dealing with clients, that's what it is. So you have to show the appropriate, respect, warmth, empathy, and understanding. But also you got to, I think a good family lawyer in relation to family law also is the one that provides good advice to their clients. So you ask me what's a good family lawyer, I would say one that provides good, prudent, practical advice, really considering the case and understanding the legal system and how it works and how the courts work. So in resolving the matter, I think it takes a lot of effort from lawyers in settling family law cases. I think they play an immensely important role in dealing with, fellow lawyers, dealing with the opposition lawyers. Because how I deal with them, I deal with them, generally speaking, on a friendly basis, practical and pragmatic. And you develop a relationship with the other lawyers, even though you're representing different clients, different interests, for the purposes of settling a case, a client's case. So I think, when you have a good relationship with the other lawyer, I think, the chance of settling cases is significantly higher.
That's good.
You have to really, live your life not to be too impacted by cases and problems, by focusing on solutions. If you focus on solutions, then
there'll be more solutions.
It doesn't seem as bad. Look, and one of the things I do is, I look at life and the situation, and I'm like, you know what? There's so many things happening around the world that we could be in very bad, very difficult, very tough circumstances. There are people that don't have food, Lee, that I've seen in Africa. And that might be like, well, but we live in, but I have seen it. I've personally seen it, so I've seen what that looks like. So when I think of it like, there are people in worse circumstances, I actually, really feel that experience that, there are people in worse circumstances. So you start looking at life with a positive kind of view. You look for the silver lining. People they obviously start thinking about their case and their family law and their relationship and their kids and their family and so many factors. But I encourage people to think 10%, maximum 15% of your energy towards that particular case. The reason for that is if you spend all your energy, 90% of your focus on a family law case, you're going to stagnate physically, emotionally, and that's going to put you in a spin. And in fact, it's going to be bad for you and the other side if you end up position. So if you can balance yourself, I think being negatively motivated to do things in your life is a recipe for disaster in how you feel. And of course you're going to do things, but you have to keep it in moderation. Keep in touch with your old friends.
Yeah.
Reconnect with good friends.
Yeah, with diversion, right?
With a diversion, put in a positive. Do something for charity. Do something. When you do something for charity or a good deed, you kind of feel good about yourself, and it's actually more better for you in a way. And
doing good things, right?
Doing good things.
Continue to do good.
Continue to do good
even
things.
if the world says stop. Just keep going.
Correct. Just
like you're trying to create an impact with other people, despite of what you're actually
absolutely how you're feeling.
How you feel.
It relates to mental health, and it relates to those emotions. So I think, whilst a separation is going to be mightily unhappy for you, you've got other positive things in your life that already, you've led a positive life, and you can let that positivity continue. And you may even help your former partner, and that may like, I know people. I've seen people. I know people. They're like, actually, you know what? I actually want to help my former partner. And you're like, no, genuinely. I feel they say to me that they've been an important part of my life. 20 years. And end of the day, they're the parent of my child, and maybe they've gone through a thing. Maybe they should get help. Maybe they should do so. I think I think that's coming from a place of genuineness. I don't think it comes from a place of hatred. So I think those people are in a better place. When you can think that way.
There's the self-awareness as well. Maybe like with all the different reasons why this is happening in every relationship. Some of them could be
there is a
really
million
complicated.
Factors.
There's complications.
It's always
maybe some of them misunderstanding could be between man and a woman.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are a different form of energy. I believe that. So once we acknowledge something didn't work out because it wasn't easy in the first place. It wasn't easy in the first place. I think the reality is that. My belief is this: we're born alone and we die alone. I think when you think of it that way, that then you are responsible for a lot of things in your life, including how you feel, because that might be the only thing that you can control.